on behalf of the 4,500 leaders, young leaders around the world, I'm honored and privileged to present the John Wallach Peacemaker Award posthumously to the late Ambassador Holbrooke. The award will be accepted by his wife, Kati Marton, and Ms. Marton herself is a distinguished journalist and a lifelong advocate of human rights. Kat.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mujib. I'm going to start the official campaign to make you a future president of Afghanistan this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to be standing before you. This is the most inspiring, uplifting evening in my memory, and I can't tell you how much this means to me, for me to be standing here and for Richard to be honored by an organization that really embodied his core values throughout his diplomatic career. His belief was that at the heart of diplomacy were human beings, not bureaucrats. Like you, Seeds, he was a bridge builder. Shortly after he was named Special Representative for Afghanistan-Pakistan, he insisted that both leaders, Hamid Karzai of Afghanistan and Asif Ali Zardari of Pakistan, come to Washington together. He would not let them come separately, and he insisted that all cabinet-level meetings take place with them together. He felt, as you Seeds feel, that once you know your adversary, once you have sat across a table from him, it's much tougher to demonize him. That is the core of Seeds' values and Richard Holbrooke's. He was not a diplomat who was imprisoned by his office. His joy, his comfort was being in the field, talking to people, hearing their point of view. I have a special connection, which I'm not even sure Janet was aware of, to this wonderful organization, and that is through John Wallach, who, when I was first starting out as a very young reporter for National Public Radio, and my first assignment was the State Department, John was a giant among the diplomatic correspondents. And he became my role model and first mentor, and I have never forgotten that. So Janet, I remember John. John and Janet have, like Richard, left the most meaningful legacy imaginable. The thousands of Seeds who will chart a more rational and a more humane future for our planet. It's just been so inspiring for me to meet them this evening, and I hope that, that for me this begins a lifelong connection to this organization, and I would really like to stay in touch with each of you whom I've already met. So, so please don't throw my cards away. Richard would be so proud to be associated and honored by Seeds of Peace. Let me just, with your indulgence, say a few words about the man with whom it was my good fortune to spend 17 years with. Mark Twain said that there's no sadder sight than a young pessimist. Well, Richard was not especially young, but pessimism was a foreign concept to him. There is always something to be done. That was his mantra, which led him to accept the most impossible jobs, most particularly his final one. Though he was first of all and famously a brilliant diplomat and negotiator, at the core of Richard's career were the fate of refugees. And he felt that refugees, the innocent victims of war, had to be at the heart of diplomacy, not at the margins. Here is what Richard was not. He was not a bureaucrat, though he was pretty good at maneuvering around bureaucrats. He was not patient. He did not believe that process should ever get in the way of outcome. He believed that if lives could be saved, it was okay to step on some powerful toes. As President Clinton reminded a packed audience at Richard's memorial at the Kennedy Center, in diplomacy, President Clinton noted, if you can do, you are saving lives, and Richard could do. He saved lives by always putting human beings ahead of bureaucracy and diplomacy. That did not always please everybody. But I will be forever grateful that I was with him in Dayton, where he ended a war, and with him at the United Nations when he forced the Security Council to put a health issue, AIDS, on its agenda for the first time. As usual, he was given 1,000 reasons why this could not be. Richard saw only that people were dying and something had to be done. He faced He faced the same resistance at the UN when he pushed to give the internally displaced the same protection as refugees. All Richard knew was that they were desperate souls, and a label was a pretty poor excuse not to save lives. His final intervention on behalf of refugees was just months before his death in flood-devastated Pakistan. There, my tall, 69-year-old husband crouched inside tiny tents, much as he had in Cambodia, Bosnia, and East Timor. He needed to hear their stories, feel what they felt, in order to be able to speak for those who could not speak for themselves once he returned to Washington. I have been overwhelmed by the outpouring of real affection, love actually, that has followed his death, and daily still keeps coming from every corner of the world. He touched so many lives. I keep asking myself, how did he have time to touch so many lives? Well, it's not because he was Superman. Richard had no magic cape, and his death reminded us that he was mortal. But I think he had seen so much suffering in the world, starting at his first post in Vietnam, and had seen so many well-spoken officials slow walk policies when they might have saved lives. He would not waste his years collecting empty titles and honors, offending no one, making no difference. I recently found a journal as I was going through Richard's papers, a journal that he kept when he was 18 years old and hitchhiking across the United States. And on one page, in capital letters, repeated 6 times, was a single word: purpose. At 18, Richard determined that his life would have a purpose, and so it did. But of course, he left too soon. I focus rather on the fact of his triumphant life, a life of the clearest purpose. He would be so proud by this honor. Thank you for continuing his work, the best tribute you can pay him. Thank you.